did. He used to be in the Marine Corps. He was really interesting.
These are the two cats. One cat is always outside. The other two cats.
In this day, he did a great cat. Hippin and Milo being influenced that'll kill them and that's whatever he tells them. I mean,
And they'll lay down and bed together. The younger cat, the baby, is Dexter. And he's he's warming up to Milo. Milo's fairly offensive. He's excited. He doesn't. I've always wanted pets that interact with well together.
Back next time,
Because I was not Milo's better.
Dickie's doing a chance to take up today. So he invited several guests to come hear that.
Every year you could also take a couple of bucks to the lunch. Classes, sometimes you would take a couple of buses up to.
Hey, no more.
Which is the site of a famous slave rebellion.
They're aware of it?
Yeah, they're working on it.
The Alumni Association. He also did it with the Rotary.
Everyone, can I have your attention, please? Thank you, thank you. Awesome. Excuse me, everyone, can I have your attention, please? Thank you. The miking system is down right now. Luckily, I have a loud voice, at least according to my wife. And so I'll speak and then they're rebooting the system. Hopefully it'll be up. If you can't hear me, let me know, raise your hand, and I will talk louder even. So my name is Chad McGlone. I'm a member here. I've been here for about 7 years now, amazingly. So I want to welcome you all. And I'd like to start with a blessing, and I'm going to get the blessing today. So can you all bow your heads, please, or do something that you feel comfortable with? Lord God, thank you for this time that we have together. Thank you for the camaraderie and the time that we have to communicate with each other. Guide us through the week, bless this food, and help us find a moment where we're able to sort of shut down and enjoy what is around us. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. And whatever.
Hey, let's pray in everyone's name. Let's not just limit it to Jesus.
Okay, that's right. Play, especially when we're playing. All right, so what I'd like to do is if you have guests, can you please have them stand up and then introduce them? And we're going to spend the first hour or so with Dickie's guests.
It won't take that long, but thank you for your indulgence. This is my best friend, Linda. You don't have to clap this time. Well, clap for Jennifer, please, our daughter, and her friend, Ryan Sanders. This is Lauren Badur. This is David's oldest. She's a junior here in journalism at UNC. Lauren, glad to have you. This is Jack Badur, who is my photo wing guy, and he is also a junior in journalism here. This is Henry. Henry and Jack are Alan's boys. Henry's a graduate of our Keenan Flagler Business School and is in the corporate world making his way. Right? Good. Good to see you. This is Mr. Rotary Emeritus, Roger, and his only friend, Dorothy. This is my friend, Mike Fox. As you know, coach baseball here, very interested in this subject. Mike, thanks for being here. table from the Goldsboro contingency is my brother Phil Bador, Tim Kirkpatrick, and Tommy Jarrett. Tommy was a student of Bill Aycock's, and I've got a quote in here from him. And these are all special guests, but we have some really special guests. Meet Nancy Aycock, Chancellor Aycock's daughter. Kincaid, and I hope you know Bill, grandson, who is a member of our club.
And I'll see you all next week. All right, so anyone else who has a guess? Yes?
Yes. I'm Julie Kenny. My guest is Jim Pyle, who's over at that table over there. Jim is a retired examiner from FDIC. I was told not to say auditor because he's trying to encourage people to like him.
That's good. I like that. Yes. Yeah.
This is a dear friend of mine, Bev Ferreira, longtime Chapel Hill resident, and the mother of a dear friend of mine, David Madison, who grew up in Chapel Hill, and I've spent a lot of time with in my youth and the present day.
Great. Yes.
Y'all, this is Phil Vick joining us for his second week in a row. And Josh Tilley, a good friend of mine, is joining us for our second or third report test.
2 weeks in a row is beating me right now, so nice job. Anyone else? Okay. Well, let me say, some of you know my father-in-law is Ron Link. And I'll never forget when I was asked to be Sergeant of Arms, I remember getting a little nervous because some of you have seen the great presentations we have here. And it reminded me of a story. I was joining a running club, and I said to my father-in-law, hey, like initiation was they'd take you into the middle of the woods and you had to tell them a joke or you were just left. If you didn't have a good enough joke, you weren't in the club. And I said to Dad, Ron, do you have any jokes for me? Some of you have seen his Sergeant of Arms presentations. I think they're wonderful. And he said, well, I have a file that I keep of jokes throughout the year, and I'm happy to take a look. And he comes up with this big file. I was amazed at what he did, and I realized this is a big deal. So I got a little nervous. One, because it's hard to talk to Ron right now. He's sort of recovering from some treatment. So I couldn't check in with him. I couldn't access his file of jokes. So I was nervous, and I thought, how about this? I will research and find the funniest joke, the world's funniest joke, and what makes it funny. So I truly did. There's been a study. What is the funniest joke? And I will tell it to you. But first of all, what goes into a funny joke? Well, apparently there are a few things. Laughing is an important thing because it says to those around us, I'm at ease and I feel safe. That's a good thing. Hopefully you all feel that way in an overwhelming way. So apparently jokes that are 103 letters, not 105, but 103 letters are funniest for some reason. I think they're short, fairly short. It's a good idea and something they tell every Sergeant of Arms, keep it short. I'll remember that. Timing is important for jokes. So on the one hand, you can say a joke about something that's happened in world events, but if it was traumatic enough, you really need to wait 17 days. So right now, a joke about UNC basketball or Ohio State football is a little soon, but it will happen. You can make a joke about it pretty soon after, certainly for Ohio State, a couple of weeks maybe. So that's one thing. Also, the research shows at 6:03 p.m. is the funniest time to tell a joke. So if you don't laugh now, come back this evening because I will be telling these all again later on. So, but sometimes you don't have the luxury of timing. So I wanted to tell you a little story. I travel the world. I see a lot of schools while I travel, and often the first day when I do a school visit is just observing the classes. And so I was traveling. I saw one time I was visiting a school and these kids were really engaged drawing. In fact, one child was so focused she didn't even notice me, this guy from the U.S., standing behind her. So I said, "What is it that you're drawing?" She looked at me and she said, I'm drawing God. Well, the teacher was embarrassed by that. She said, "Honey, no one knows what God looks like." And the girl said, well, they will in 5 minutes. So I think that's a funny joke. That was 105 letters long, so I appreciate you all laughing even though I broke the rule. One reason it might be funny though is that it hits another category. There's really a sort of a naive, so a naive or gullible other. So in this case, the teacher was the gullible other, and it was sort of funny. So I sort of like that. Another story, I wrestled in high school and in college, so I'm excited to hear about athletics. But I also played the bagpipes. So in college, I played the bagpipes. I was contacted by a small community in southern Ohio to see if I'd play for a homeless man's funeral. They didn't have money, but they wanted to have something that would honor him. So of course I agreed, and on the day of the funeral I headed south. The directions were not very good, so I was completely lost, and I was a young man aspiring to be an adult man, so I could not ask for instructions. So they were poor. I was lost. In fact, I was lost the time of the funeral came. It went, and finally, I think I found the spot. I saw a bunch of men filling up the hole. These workers were filling up the hole. And I thought, you know what? I'm here. I spent 2 hours in the car. I'm just going to play anyway. So I got out. And I played. It was the best time I've ever played. I was really in the moment. I played Amazing Grace. I cried. They cried. I was like, oh, that was good. At least someone had an impact in their life. I got in the car. And as I was driving away, I heard one of the workers go, man, I have never experienced anything like that in my life. And I've been putting in septic tanks for 20 years. So I like that one also. One reason I like that is because it has a surprise ending, right? You were expecting something else, and I think it was a good, ironic ending. Well, maybe those are the funniest jokes in the world, but what is exactly the funniest joke in the world? This is truly researched. You can Google it. So let me read it. So there are two hunters that are out in the woods when one of them collapses. He doesn't seem to be breathing and his eyes are glazed over. The other guy whips out his phone and he calls 911. He's grasping. Oh my gosh, I think my friend's dead. What can I do? The operator says, well, calm down. I can help, but first, let's make sure he's dead. There's a silence and then a gunshot. The guy gets back on the phone and says, okay, now what? So I sort of like that one too. All right, so if you're going to come back at 6:03, please put $1 in the fine basket. If you're going to tell a joke yourself, also we'd like to hear $1. So I'm going to pass this around. Thank you. All right, and then with that, I'm going to turn it over to our president.
Yes.
How's everybody doing today? How's everybody doing today? All right. We had a wonderful time last night at Squids. Raise your hand if you showed up last night at Squids. We had about 35, 40 people there. It was wonderful. It was a great opportunity to just gather, socialize, get to know some people that maybe you don't know, or maybe hang out with some people that you already do know. We're going to keep doing some things like that. We have axe throwing coming up in Durham. And we're going to do wine and design for those of you who have a creative streak and want to sip some wine and paint some paintings. Our raffle is underway. We're right around $1,300 or $1,400. Has everyone here received a link for the raffle? Yeah? Okay. Raise your hand if you have not donated to the raffle yet. That's all right. I'm not going to publicly shame you or humiliate you. But please, what we're trying to do is raise money for the teacher supply store. So there'll be another link going out today. Please make sure to donate, buy raffle tickets. It's an opportunity to win $1,500, $1,000, or $500 prize. And forward the link. We're going to send a link out, an email out, so that you can forward it to your friends, your family, anyone who you know. And we're gonna try and raise as much money as we can. Brian Stabler, as you know, passed away recently. His service will be next week at the Church of the Holy Family on Fordham Drive, Fordham Boulevard, Thursday at 2 p.m. There'll also be a DAC DB email going out about that. So just want you to be aware of that. I know we have some inductions here shortly. Does anyone have any announcements they'd like to make?
Omar.
Linda.
Yeah. We have a litter pickup on Saturday, the 28th of January. We'll be meeting at the Estes Elementary School at 9 a.m. on Saturday. I've sent out an email. I'll be sending out a reminder for those of you who would love to participate. By all means, and definitely the newer members, this is a great way to spend some time and support the community, have fun, and get to know your fellow parents.
Thank you, Linda. Tom.
I just wanted to mention also, because you know, it's up there that the Green Team is having a meeting on Tuesday, and we've kind of expanded the Green Team because we realize that there's certainly people that are interested in environmental issues that are not on the Green Team. And in fact, we're kind of doing away with the Green Team and calling it more the Green Initiative. But the point is that that's a Zoom meeting on Tuesday. You probably got a DAC TV from Liz Henke about it. My son is actually giving the presentation, so I'm not trying to put any pressure on him or you guys, but it's about a company he works for in Atlanta that has basically gone from a regular carpet manufacturing company to carbon neutral in about 25 years. That's an important part of manufacturing. So I just wanted to mention that, but the point is that you guys will be getting emails about green initiatives because we know that people are involved or interested, even if they haven't signed up for something.
Tom. Yeah, Bill.
We don't usually do this, but because Brian said it was real close to him. His son asked me to try to help him sell Brian's piano. Brian, that's 5 years ago, bought a really nice Clavino. This is a Yamaha baby grand piano. He's got to get it out of Azalea Station within a week. So if you know anybody who wants the most incredible piano you can imagine, on a very nice piano, just get in touch with me or Omar or something like that. We don't usually do this, but this because it's for Brian and his son really would appreciate it. Or like I said, anybody that needs a piano, just let me know.
Thank you, Bill. Also today we have a very special guest who's returned to grace us with his presence. And I'd just like to take a moment for us to all to recognize Mr. Rotary Roger Jennings. Please stand up. This man, he created his own. He created the name Mr. Rotary. You'd think that someone else would have given him that name, but he came up with that for himself. And you know, it's no secret that, you know, apart from myself, Rob Maitland, and Alan Young, you're probably one of the best sergeant at arms ever graced the stage. And we're going to have a 55th anniversary this month of this club, kind of having a celebration which Jim is putting together. And so Roger will be sergeant at arms for us at least one last time. So it's great to have you here. Ma, these are my in-laws if you didn't know that. It's been a while since I've seen you, but it is honestly great to have you back. I know a lot of people ask about you all the time, and you know, most of them are glad you're gone, but some of them want to see you. It is really special to have you here. We have a stage for you today, Dickie. I'm not sure who's introducing Dickie today.
I don't need it.
Okay, this man does not need an introduction. We're working on a functioning microphone. Jeff's back there working on it. I know you've got a loud voice, but we do have a stage so everyone can see you.
Omar, the induction.
Yes. Before you speak, now that I've got you up here, thank you, Rob. We have a few inductions.
All right, you want me to induce them?
What are you talking about, Dickie? Yeah. No, you can hang out here if you want, or have a seat. And,
Where do I sit? Okay, I'll just sit.
It's up to you. Linda, please. Rob, thank you.
It's a tough job being president, for Omar anyways. Jake, you may want to take a seat. I'm sorry he called you up early.
I need to get up there, Rob.
I don't know. Roger, you see what you've been missing. I mean, it's chaos. Okay. We are going to do one of my favorite things today. Can we go ahead and have our two new members, Jim Robles and Tom Giannakos? Am I saying that right? Yes. Come up, as well as their sponsors. Jim Robles is sponsored by John Garman and Keith Wolf. And Tom Giannakos is sponsored by Julie Kenny. Welcome. Come on up here. It's a confusing time. Come on up. Thanks for the help, Omar.
Anytime, Rob.
All right, here we go. You ready? Sure. We're ready. Sean, you can step to the left side here. That way all the photographers can get pictures. Okay. Fellow Rotarians, it is the duty of our Rotary Club to add new members from time to time so that we may not only increase our usefulness and influence as a club, but also to extend the spirit of Rotary throughout our community and indeed our world. Today we welcome to our ranks and admit to membership Jim Robles and Tom Giannakos, sponsored by Julie Kenny and Keith Wolf. Folks, Rotary is an international organization of business and professional people with more than 33,000 Rotary clubs in over 200 countries. Jim and Tom, I wish to impress upon you that you have been admitted not only to our club, but also to a worldwide association of over 1.3 million like-minded business and professional leaders. With the pin you are about to receive, you're entitled to travel throughout the world. Find a Rotary club within easy distance and be warmly welcomed by fellow Rotarians, even though the language may be different, the food unusual, even more so than our food, and the location far from home. Guys, the honor and privilege of Rotary membership also carries with it duties and obligations. You will be expected to attend our club's meetings regularly, to enthusiastically perform your share of club service, like our family house night that's coming up, I think, Thursday, is that right? To actively participate in fellowship activities like the pop-up we had last night, and to place your knowledge and talents at the disposal of the club. For example, the litter pickup that's coming up on the 28th. Always remember, our Rotary motto is service above self. Also, Linda has recently developed a new passport that's going to help you guys know exactly who to meet and what to do, which I encourage new and existing members to take a look at because it's really neat and it should help you get yourselves ingratiated with the club. Speaking of the club, our goals in Rotary are to encourage fellowship, high ethical standards, opportunities to serve society, and advance international goodwill, understanding, and peace. Rotary challenge you to live by the Rotary four-way test in all you say or do. Are you familiar with the test? Do you accept this challenge and commitment going forward?
I do.
Very good. Then I ask all of our members to please rise. Is Bob Ward here?
Yes.
Please stand up, Bob. Jim and Tom, in the name of the Rotary Club of East Chapel Hill, it is now my honor and privilege to formally admit you to membership to our club and to ask your sponsors, Keith and Julie, to affix your emblem lapel on your lapel, your emblem pin on your lapel. Congratulations.
Thank you.
To tell the club about a little bit about yourselves. Okay. All right, go for it.
I'm retired bowling. I'm past president of the Washington Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty and a former board member of Planned Parenthood Greater Washington and North Idaho. If you notice the Northwest theme there, I was very, very happy retired in our dream home. when we recruited our daughter for the mathematics department. We made a blind leap, and I love everything about it. It's been 6 years. It's been wonderful.
I grew up outside of New York. My dad was from Hendersonville, so when it came time for college, he had went to UNC, recommended I come here. My first day in North Carolina was the day I enrolled, and I majored in journalism because I like sports journalism. I worked after graduation a couple TV stations in North Carolina, and then I went up to New York to work at a company called HBO. In 1980, I went up to Bristol, Connecticut to work for the Entertainment Sports Programming Network. And 42 years later, I retired. I traveled around the world in a technical capacity covering many sporting events. Moved down here 6.5 years ago, retired, and looking forward to joining the club and meeting the members. Thank you.
I can see just from your introductions that you are the two most interesting guys in our entire club. Thanks for joining. You've really boosted the value of our club today. Thanks again. And now, Dickie, if you'd like to come up.
Okay, let's get started. You're going to meet another interesting guy, William B. Aycock. So why do this? Why am I up here? There's no one that I respect and admire more than William B. Aycock. In my 55 years with the University of North Carolina, I've never met anybody who was more respected and admired than Chancellor Aycock. He was a brilliant teacher. Some say, and it's all subjective, the best teacher UNC's ever had in any department or division. He led UNC as chancellor with distinction, determination, courage, and he invented the Carolina Way. He was a World War II veteran. He established a culture in athletics called the Carolina Way, which simply meant that you didn't just judge success by the number of wins, but more importantly, by how things were done the right way and by academic success. So Omar, thank you for this opportunity on allowing me up here not knowing what the product would be. I've got a good subject matter. I'm going to hope that the delivery equals the subject matter. I introduced Jack. I've been working on this for over 2 years. Not every day, not every week, not every month for sure. But it's been in my heart for 2 years. Most of what we're going to talk about comes from him, from his stories. Some from Tommy Jarrett, who told me what it was like to be in his class. Some from Nancy, his daughter. Some from visits that Linda and I took out to Carolina Meadows to have dinner and lunch with him. Visits were also made with Mr. Friday, Mr. William Friday. Visits were made with Doug Dibbert. And Coach Smith and I went out to be with him and take him to lunch at least 3 times. Never with the intention of doing this. But after all this information comes together for me, I want his story to be told and I want it to be remembered. Let's see where we are at that. Okay, thank you. Your head up, be good. I want you to meet 3 people that he was close to. Thank you. That's Grace Melbourne of Snow Hill, North Carolina. Bill Aycock met her in 1941 over here in Raleigh working for the WPA, and he had his eye out for her. But he told friends he would not ask her out for a date if she was taller than he was. So he had a plan that he would meet her when she went over to the water cooler. He would go over and measure things up and make that determination. Now here the story divides. Either he was one lucky soul and she just happened to wear flats that day, or her spies told her that he was coming, and she wore flats. So they were married later, and 55 years, just devoted to each other completely. That's Miss Grace. That's Frank Porter Graham. Frank Porter Graham was a mentor to Bill Aycock and to Bill Friday. Of small stature, but absolutely giant. When I came to school here in 1962, this man was already a legend. He led with warmth. He had a very effective personality. He was made president of the university in 1930. In 1932, he was made president of the Consolidated University at that time, which was Chapel Hill, State College in Raleigh, and WC in Greensboro. His Sunday afternoon receptions were legendary. All students were invited to come by the president's house. It's there now on Franklin Street. And say hello and greet the president. He could greet you. And if you came back, it was said, he would absolutely remember your name. And not only remember your name, but he would remember your hometown. He was progressive. He was a New Dealist. He was liberal. He believed in FDR and Truman. In 1949, Mel Broughton, who was a sitting senator, passed away. He died. After a long wait, Carr Scott appointed Frank Porter Graham to be the U.S. Senator from this state. And he served for that time, and then he needed to run for election. He ran for election. Now, in those days, the election was really determined in the primary because this was a one-party state, Democratic Party, Republican Party really didn't exist. Frank Porter Graham won 48% of the vote, not the 50% needed. There was a runoff. Willis Smith had some doubt about running, decided to run. And in what people say, even today, was the most bitter campaign that's ever been in the state of North Carolina, with all kinds of racial overtones, communist, everything. Frank Porter Graham lost that election. Soon after, he was appointed by the United Nations to represent the United Nations in trying to resolve the conflict between India and Pakistan. That's where Bill Aycock and Bill Friday come in, because he asked them to join that delegation, not at the same time, but to assist him in having this resolved. Of course, you know that was not able to be done. Now, you also know there's the Frank Porter Graham Student Union. There's the Frank Porter Graham Elementary School. There's the Frank Porter Graham Child Development Center. When this man retired, he had 20 honorary degrees that had been awarded to him over time. That's just unheard of. So you can see why Bill Aycock put a lot of trust and wanted to use this man as a mentor. Okay, Jack. Anybody know who this is on the left? Don't you say anything, Fred. Moonlight. This is Moonlight Graham. Moonlight Graham had a career in the major leagues. He played in a half an inning. He never had a bat, an at-bat. And when he finished baseball, he became a physician in Minnesota and represented his community very well. Burt Lancaster. Burt Lancaster played Moonlight Graham, right? In the movie Field of Dreams. Remember that? Stepped across the line, saved the girl. Why did I show you this picture? Moonlight Graham is Frank Porter Graham's brother. Bill Friday was a colleague of Bill Aycock. You could debate who had the most influence on one another. I would make a debate. I would join that debate and say that William Aycock had tremendous influence on William Friday. William Friday's from Dallas, North Carolina. He was head of the University of North Carolina from 1956 to 1986. And I would say that no one's done more for higher education in North Carolina than Bill Friday. Bill Friday appointed Bill Aycock to be Chancellor of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. This is little known. First time I think it's ever been said in public. When Bill Aycock accepted, he said, I will under one condition. He said, I know it's my turn. I'll take my turn. But Bill Friday, you need to leave Southfield. At the time, the president of the system, meaning, as I said, State College, UNCG, and here, and the chancellor of the university were in the same building. And Bill Aycock steps out and says, I've got to run my territory. I've got to run the University of North Carolina. And you know, okay, Jack, the Friday Center is named for, you know that, Bill and Ida Friday. Okay. Bill Aycock was born in Lucama, North Carolina. Population 300. 50 miles south-southeast of Raleigh. At about age 2, he moves to Selma with his family on a farm about 30 miles southeast of Raleigh. He's a gifted student, but it is there that he develops this desire to teach and his intense interest in rural North Carolina, and especially the health of rural North Carolina. They live on a farm, although his dad is a judge. He's a self-educated district court judge, pretty much like you see a district court judge today. But he had cows. And every morning at 5:30, Bill Aycock and his dad milked those cows. And Bill Aycock said later he thought the only reason his dad had those cows so they would have something to do together. He goes to NC State as an undergraduate. He goes to NC State because it's close. He can go back home and take care of his chores on the farm from time to time, and because they have a school of education and he wants to teach. That's in 1936, and he goes on a teacher fellowship, which means some of his tuition will be paid back for him. He becomes president of the student body with 77% of the vote. Can you imagine that? He graduates from State, he comes here, gets a master's degree in history, and goes to Greensboro and teaches 2 years in Greensboro, then does that WPA, and then, of course, the war breaks out. He joins the Army. Jack. He had ROTC at NC State, so he comes in as a captain, and his first assignment is as company commander of a training company that is training Japanese Americans to be proficient in infantry tactics so they can go and supplement other troops that are out there fighting. Interesting that at that time, they were training Japanese Americans in a different way. Bill Aycock was always very proud of their involvement. He becomes a lieutenant colonel, and he takes over as company battalion commander of an infantry battalion in the Battle of the Bulge in Patton's Third Army, up front. When he takes over, Nancy tells him, he told his family, the only instruction, the only briefing that I got was good luck, buddy. He gets a bronze medal, a silver medal, the Legion of Merit, described here for 2 movements where he was told in very limited time he had to move his battalion both times across a river, secure a front area, engage the troops. And he was recognized for that. There is an incident at one time when he leaves his tent and he's shot at by a sniper who doesn't hit him, who doesn't wound him, but he came as close as possible in harm's way. And he decided in that moment, he took an oath to himself, that whatever he encountered in the future, he would always do the right thing. Because nothing could come as close to the consequence that he faced potentially in that moment of battle. Nothing could equal that. So whatever he was faced with, whatever consequence, he would do the right thing. And you'll know more about that. Okay. So he decides he wants to go to law school. He musters out in Mississippi. He drives all night to come to Chapel Hill. Saturday morning, he's presented to Dean Weddick, and he says, I want to go to law school. And Dean Weddick says, you're 2 weeks late. We've already started. Chancellor Aycock convinces him, says, I can get caught up. I can do that over the weekend. Dean Weddick says, the bookstore is closed. We don't have any books. Professor Aycock looks around and says, well, you got plenty here. You must have what I would need. Let me borrow your books. And I promise I'll have them back to you by the first or middle of the week. That can go back. He becomes editor-in-chief of Law Review, #1 in his class, right here. And you see there's Mr. Friday as well as a part of that. He belongs to a study group, the most famous study group in the history, I think, of the UNC Law School. This is President Friday. This is Dixon Phillips, who later becomes dean of the law school and a federal judge. That's Chancellor Aycock. That's John Jordan, who has the longest serving term on the Board of Governors or the Board of Higher Education, and was a member of the legislature for like 25 years. And that's Bill Dees of Goldsboro, Tommy's firm, right? Okay. And Bill Dees was the last chairman of the Board of Higher Education and the very first chairman of the Board of Trustees, of the Board of Governors. Dixon Phillips said about Chancellor Aycock, Bill Aycock operated at a different level. He was our leader in academics, personal excellence, in most everything you can think of. So at one time while he's a student, his professor, one of his professors, Herbert Baer, grows sick and can't teach, loses his voice. The professor goes in to see the dean and says, I've got this medical issue, I can't teach. And the dean says, well, we'll get somebody in here for you. And he says, no, not necessary. My student, Bill Aycock, will teach this class. And for 6 weeks, Bill Aycock teaches that class. Later we learn that Bill's a little bit disappointed because he doesn't get the highest grade in that course. As he's ending his time as a student, he's called into the dean, and he's told, Bill Aycock is told, we have a vacancy. We have a teaching position available. Would you like to be a professor at the law school? So to anybody's knowledge, the first time and only time a person goes from being a student, walks out of the classroom, and into the classroom as a professor. So he taught at the law school from 1948 to 1985. He taught property. They have an award over at the law school called the McCall Teaching Award, chosen by the third-year students, the last year. And Bill Aycock got that 5 times, and they almost named it in his honor. Tommy Jarrett describes him as he was your friend. You wanted to be in class. He was the most outstanding teacher that I ever had. He was a gentleman and respected. So he's teaching at the law school, and then Bill Friday calls him in 1957 and asks him to be chancellor. And he serves as chancellor from 57 to 64. And he says, well, I guess it's my turn, so I'll do it, but I really want to teach. And when I'm done, I'll go back and teach. During his time, enrollment increased by 4,500, almost 5,000 students anticipating the baby boom coming. This is what he accomplished during his time. That's him being sworn in as chancellor. That's Governor Hodges. Excuse me, President Kennedy came during his time. Here you see Mr. Friday and Chancellor Aycock maybe introducing him. Carmichael Auditorium was built. Huge issue for UNC athletics, and it's still being used today. The plans for South Campus were developed, and 2 big dorms, Craig and Ehringhaus, were built. He worked hard to keep alumni out of athletics. While the university is committed to teaching, research, and service, Bill Aycock's first love was teaching. He was very proud that they got 1 million books in the library during his time. The hard thing to imagine now is that health affairs was really coming on then. The hospital wasn't built to 1952. We didn't have a 4-year med school until 1954. So during Aycock's time, you saw a tremendous growth in health affairs and at the medical school in particular. Entering into his 7th year, he told Mr. Friday, soon I'll be away from the law school for 7 years. After 7 years, a person can be assumed dead. I don't want my colleagues at the law school to think I'm dead. I want to introduce you to some of the challenges that he faced. Dixie Classic. Anybody remember? It was the tournament. It was bigger than the NCAA tournament. It was Everett Case's idea who went to NC State as their head basketball coach. It brought in the 4 schools from North Carolina, Wake, Duke, State, Carolina, invited 4 outstanding teams to come in. I'm pretty sure I saw Oscar Robertson play in the Dixie Classic. It was a huge event, held around Christmas time. But as early as 1959, there were allegations of point shaving across the country, and pretty much including NC State and suspected Carolina. On May 14, 1961, Bill Friday was called to a meeting by the district attorney in Raleigh, North Carolina, and told that the FBI had NC State and Carolina under surveillance, and they were sure that in a meeting with the bookies and 2 NC State guys that a gun was pulled. And Mr. Friday then says, I knew immediately something had to be done. So, that's a picture of Reynolds Coliseum and what the Dixie Classic looked like when it was in full bloom. So, Mr. Friday gets Bill Aycock and Dr. John T. Caldwell, the chancellor at NC State, together. And he told me they spent a day and a half trying to sort out what they were going to do about the Dixie Classic. And we know for certain that Bill Aycock, going into that meeting, said, we can decide anything we want to do, and that's fine. But North Carolina's not playing in that Dixie Classic. It's not going to happen. So they come out, and this was their idea of a press conference. The Dixie Classic gets canceled, reduced out of state, out of conference games from 9, which you play 9 out of conference games, to 2. No summer league, limit the number of recruits outside of the ACC footprint to 2. Now think about that. For North Carolina, we'd won the national championship in 1957. How many guys did we have from the ACC footprint on that team?
One.
One? Who was it?
Millsburg, Ken Roseman.
I'm talking about of the 5. No, they were all from New York.
New York.
They were all, every one of them was from New York. So you can see, it's easy to think about this now, oh, what's the big deal? It was a huge deal. My guys will not play. And that's just 4 years away from the NCAA championship. Okay, who is this? This is Doug Moe as a player. That's Doug Moe as a coach. Who is Doug Moe? Doug Moe was from Brooklyn. He came here to play basketball, enrolled in 1958, two-time All-American. He goes on to play in the ABA, and he coaches San Antonio Spurs, the Denver Nuggets. But let's come back to what happened here. Chancellor Aycock is told that Doug Moe attended a meeting in New York with bookies. After he learns that, he calls Doug Moe in for a meeting in which Doug Moe denies that he was in that meeting. He excuses him, Chancellor Aycock excuses him, calls him back in, asks again. Doug Moe again says, I was not in that meeting. Same thing happens. The third time, Doug admits that he was. Aycock sends Doug Moe to the men's honor court for violating the honor code. The honor code says you cannot lie, cheat, or steal. You cannot lie to a university official. And I know you were in that meeting. You said you were in that meeting. We're sending you to the honor court. The honor court exonerates him, finds him not guilty. Chancellor Aycock calls him in and expels him. It's also known that Doug accepted $75 in that meeting. He did not agree to do any point shaving. It's never been said that Doug Moe had anything to do with point shaving. It has been said that he attended that meeting. He took $75. The bookie said, take this money, it'll help you get home, give you food and travel money. He took that money. Chancellor Aycock expels him. Doug Moe later is asked, how do you feel about North Carolina? How do you feel about Chancellor Aycock? He said Aycock was doing his job. He told me in that meeting that everybody has a time of adversity. You can choose how you want to go with it, what you want to do with it. You can choose to take the high road and fix it, or you can choose to swallow down in it and have it beat you down. Aycock also calls Dean Smith and says, I've talked to the president at Elon, and Elon will take Doug Moe. If Doug Moe wants to graduate from school, he can do that. He'd already finished his eligibility at North Carolina, but he can finish it at Elon. And Doug decides to do that and does graduate. He sees the president on campus one day of Elon. The president of Elon says, wow, I got a recommendation from you, from your chancellor. I've never had anything so glowing as what he had to say about you. Well, back at home, things aren't going so well. Because, you see, the students had worked through a whole system, and my brother was involved in it, where there's this notion of honor and student involvement and student deciding the future, the cases of lying, cheating, and stealing, student self-government. And Aycock had gone in the face of that to say, they may found you guilty, I expel you. The chief of police comes to him and says, the students going to march on your house. They're coming. He says, that's fine. Have them meet me in Girard Hall. Have the dean of students come, and I'll meet with them as long as they want to meet. And the door's closed. Girard Hall, which is right next to South Building, just across from the old well, if you want to know about where that is. The room is full, the doors are closed. He explains to them, he stands there, he takes their questions. It's a meeting of an hour, hour and a half, and when he walks out, they give him a standing ovation. He later says the integrity of the university was at stake, and I need to establish that. Okay. Frank McGuire. Now, Chancellor Aycock didn't have a lot of love for Frank McGuire. You see, one of the first things he had to deal with were these allegations of NCAA violations dealing with entertainment of people and so forth. And but one day his secretary, Aycock's secretary, walks in and says, a group of guys from the Rams Club want to meet with you. And they want to talk about how they do not believe Coach McGuire is being supported enough by the university. ACOC, wanting to keep arm's length from alum, says, well, tell them I'll not meet with them. But tell them also this Saturday's the football game and I'll be in my office. And should they happen to want to come by and find me in there, be fine with me, and I'll be glad to talk with them. And so that happens. And they come in, they sit down on the desk, in front of his desk, and they start talking about Frank McGuire needs this, Frank McGuire needs that. And Aycock opens his bottom drawer and starts piling on papers that are allegations from the NCAA. And he starts talking about, are you aware of these? Are you aware of these? And that meeting is dissolved. Now there's another conversation too about a time with Chancellor Aycock with an alum who came to him and said, I'm coming after Chuck Erickson, who was the athletic director. I'm going to fire, I won't see Chuck Erickson fired because I'm giving all this money to the university. And Aycock says, well, last I checked, the director of athletics reports to me. And so if you want to fire him, you're going to have to fire me. And that's just not going to happen. Okay. That's Lenny Rosenbluth. Frank McGuire brought him. You know that. 1957 national championship team. Okay. Frank McGuire also brings Dean Smith here in 57. I think that's the right year. To be an assistant coach. Well, in 1961, McGuire goes over to the chancellor's office to tell the chancellor that he's resigning, that he's going to leave the university and go coach the Philadelphia Warriors. Well, Aycock does not try to convince him otherwise. And he says, by the way, do you know where Dean Smith is? Now, Coach Smith and Aycock had worked together on those NCAA violations that I told you about. Dean Smith was the lead guy for basketball in the athletic department. In fact, they had traveled together. Do you know where Dean Smith is? And McGuire says, yeah, he's in the car. He brought me over here. Aycock says, send him in. I want to talk to him. He comes in. Aycock doesn't even ask him to sit down. He says, you want to be the head coach at the University of North Carolina? And Dean says, yes, I do. That's how Dean Smith got hired. And he said, let me tell you something. I care about winning, but I care more about academic success. I care more about doing things the right way and no NCAA violations. If you take care of that business, you're going to have no trouble with me. Dean Smith, trouble, 36 years, 97% graduation rate, 879 wins, which was the most ever at that time, 2 national championships, 11 Final Fours in 1 losing season, and never an NCAA issue. Aycock's biggest challenge. Okay. Speaker ban. You ever heard of it? June 25th, 1963, Grace Aycock is listening to the radio and she hears that a law has been passed restricting speech on universities, 4-year colleges and universities in North Carolina. She calls Bill Aycock and says, do you know about this? He says, I know nothing about this. Mr. Friday knew nothing about this. So what it said was, if you were a known member of the Communist Party, if you ever advocated the overthrow of the Constitution, or you ever invoked the 5th Amendment regarding communist activities, you could not speak on a college or university campus in North Carolina. They were all appalled. It passed the legislature in 4 minutes. No hearing, no notice, nothing to the university system. Governor Sanford did not support it, but of course, he didn't have a veto at that time. it grows out of the Cold War, the sense of communism, and it grows out of the notion that civil rights is getting underway here. It grows out of the notion that it's a communist influence that's promoting this civil rights thing. Bill Aycock takes the lead. He's told by his supervisors to be quiet. You're going to make them mad in Raleigh. You're going to upset them. The very people who support and develop your budget, you're going to piss them off. He'll have nothing to do with that. He went public. What does he do? He goes to every major newspaper editorial board in the state. He goes to alumni meetings. He's interviewed on radio and television. He agrees to a debate statewide. He does interviews of all kinds. He's told that the people of North Carolina support this law, that the majority of people support this law. He says, of course they do. It's against communism. And until the leadership of this state steps up and educates them, they'll continue to support it. We have an obligation. Clear example of leadership and courage. So how does he attack it? He says, what does known mean? What is known here in Chapel Hill may not be known somewhere else. What does Communist Party mean? Does that mean if you go to a meeting? He said, we got all kinds of visiting professors here. Physics, chemistry. We don't investigate their background. He calls it an insult. Here's the interesting thing. There are no penalties to this law. There's no time in jail. There's no financial. If you were to do this, I don't know what a judge would ask Alan. What would a judge do with this? Of course, he calls it unconstitutional. I'm talking about Bill Aycock now. And he says it's embarrassing. It's just, you're doing just what the communists want you to do. You're restricting freedom of speech. And here's the interesting thing. You could go down to the high school and talk. You could go to an elementary school and talk. You could go to anywhere else in the state of North Carolina except on a college campus, four-year college campus, if you had done any of these things. Well, he certainly wanted to treat Aycock, his opponents, with respect. Well, here's a News Observer, the disgrace of North Carolina, Daily Tar Heel, Jack next, Woe, Aycock, and blast speaker ban. But he wants to treat his opponents with respect. Jesse Helms. Senator Helms, before he's Senator Helms, he's got this end of the broadcast thing on Channel 5 where he has 3 to 5 minutes, whatever, very conservative approach, and he's blasting Aycock, he's blasting UNC, and he's in support of the speaker ban. So what does Chancellor Aycock do? He uses Jesse Helms' words. Jesse Helms had to appear before the FCC to justify doing what he was doing on Channel 5 every day. And Jesse Helms' words were, when one is denied any part of his rightful freedom, then every man's freedom has been lessened. So he turns it around. But our students had the answer. They invited 2 communists, known communists, to speak on campus, and they were turned down. So where did they go? They go to Franklin Street. They put the 2 speakers on the sidewalk and across the way. Now, I had 2 friends who went to that and said it was the worst. They made the worst speeches you can imagine. But he got that kind of attention. Okay. Excuse me. The law was heard in federal court in Greensboro and 3-judge panel. After less than 10 minutes of consideration, threw it out, said it was unconstitutional. Okay. So I was trying to figure out a way how I could get in this thing. This is Mr. Friday and me visiting Bill Aycock out at Carolina Meadows. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to be in it, I better get somebody else in it. It was such fun to go out and visit with him. His mind was just as sharp as it possibly could be. Dan read to him when he was losing his eyesight. Is that right? But he loved, Chancellor Aycock loved the radio. And you could go in to see him 5 days after a Carolina baseball, football, basketball game, and he would tell you about it. And he would say something like, "Now, Dick, that boy from Forsyth County, he's really swinging that bad, isn't he? What happened to that running back from Moore County? Weren't we counting on him?" Some of the greatest visits were with him. And I remember one story, and then I'm going to close it out. He told me about a time that Chief Beaumont came to see him when he was in office and said, "Well, I just saved you a heartache. I just told," "What'd you do?" He said, "I told some civil rights people down there that they couldn't march through campus. We had too much going on." Bill Aycock says, "Well, Chief Beaumont, I tell you what you do. You go right by and you tell them they can. And tell them Cameron Avenue tends to be busy. If they got any kids, they ought to have the kids on the sidewalk. And furthermore, when they come up the South Building, come inside. If I'm not busy, I'd love to have a visit with them." So I was thinking about how to end this thing, and I thought, well, two people can do this in their own words better than I can. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the, not very clear, but this is the Aycock Family Medicine building that is named for his honor over there off Manning Drive. I'm sorry, Jack. Hugh Morton took this photograph. You know who they are. He made 2 copies, and he sent them both to Dean Smith. Dean Smith sent it to Chancellor Aycock with a note on the back, and this is what it said. Think about this. Coach Smith to Chancellor Aycock. "This is the only picture of me in my office. This is the only picture of me in my office." That just says a ton. And then we got to the very end when he was asked one time, "Where did you get the courage to speak out so strongly against the speaker ban?" And I went back to a quote he said when he took office. "I don't know if it will last a week or a decade, but I'm going to do what I think is right. Then I'm going to go back and teach my class."
Vicki, this is a perfect time, and I wish we could ask Chancellor Aycock what he thought in 1963, when I was coming up to date Nancy in my 1953 young Buick. I know she was impressed. We were, at that time, I believe it or not, I was saving money then. I'd always put it neutral when I could coast down the hill. Here's what I was on the steering wheel. Nancy, I'm afraid you'll remember this. We'd gone to the Big O down Colonial Drugs. I think she got a big orange cream. I got a grape cream. I'm wearing my white ducks and a navy blue shirt. And we started going down Airport Road to the police station. Of course, I had steering wheel, grape cream. And I decided I needed to put the petroleum neutral.
Cliff, there may be another question here.
I put it in reverse, doing about 20 miles an hour. And Nancy went down in the floorboard, I threw great things all over. Then I had to pretend it was the car, I didn't know what. Have you forgiven me?
Absolutely.
Oh, Cliff.
We got time for just Bob.
Confirm that Oscar Robinson did play defensive back.
I can't do
Worst designed stadium in the world, with more seats in the end zone than on the side.
You know why I got that way? It was designed to be much smaller. They hire Everett Case, who is a high school basketball coach. He comes in and says, "This is not big enough." but the steel's already in place. And they don't want to start over, so the only place they can go to get seats are on the sides.
With no incline and just straight.
Yes.
Dickie, wouldn't it be interesting to know what Chancellor Aycock would say about NIL, the transfer portal, and conference alignments? Any ideas?
I do have. I've thought about that. I do know. I do have a firm belief of what he would say, and it wouldn't be popular. He'd say it's time. This is not what we're about. This is not what we do. We don't pay these salaries. We don't pay these athletes. We're beyond the scope of what the academic enterprise is about. We're going to play in another division. There's no question in my mind, with Frank Portergram's influence on him, I don't know about, and Mr. Friday's, if that's where he would be.
Dickie, you didn't mention that Dean got hung at Effigy.
Well, Bill Aycock didn't have anything to do with that.
I thought maybe he had said something about it, or did he talk to you about it? Did he know about it? I know he did.
I'm sure he knew about it, Bill. I do not remember.
That was after Dad was chancellor. It was like next year. Or
Okay,
the year
Nancy
after.
says it's the next year. One thing I didn't say, which is, I don't know, I got to observe him in law school, not necessarily as a teacher, but as a professor. And I've really never seen anything like it. I've been around faculty now around here forever. Bill Aycock never missed a faculty meeting. Now, you know there's some giants in that law school. And he seldom had anything to say. But when he did, it was powerful. And it carried the day. I never saw a time when that law faculty went against the position that Bill Aycock took. But he didn't do it often because he knew what his influence would be. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.